What is up, rebel colonists and Mars citizens? I am just a simple new type, and in this episode we will witness a new era blossom as we go from After Colony to Mars Century, or MC Era, as we begin our coverage of Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, Frozen Teardrop, Volume 1, Rondo of Redemption. In this episode, a young Kathy Poe will meet with Master Wang, where they look into the files of After Colony's past. With the help of virtual reality, we go back in time to AC-170, where we see how Trace Kusanada came to be. So let's get into this. MC-0022, Mars's Oceanus Borealis is still a wasteland regardless of the terraforming efforts on Mars. A ship is heading towards a preventer base. They're 5 kilometers out. This is Kathy Poe, daughter of Sally Poe. She is a representative of President Dorothy Catalonia. Yes, that Dorothy, with the eyebrows. She is meeting with the preventers. Like we saw in Endless Waltz, they are still responsible for dismantling weapons in the pursuit of peace. She is delivering a data chip to Master Chang, along with the database of the Earth Sphere's History Bank. The files are titled Summer AC-195, Autumn AC-195, and Spring AC-196. She knows that this involves the elusive Gundams, and knows that AC-195 was the apex of history. This first file was written in German regarding a person named Miliardo Peacecraft. The author of this is most likely Trace Kusanada himself. Each section begins with an excerpt from Bohemian poet Rainer Maria Rilke. His works focus on disbelief and crisis of faith. AC-195, Summer. Miliardo reflects on the beginning of humanity into space and even references the Anno Domini era. He says that man has become stagnant and exploration is far and few between. Conflict amongst humans tends to distract exploring. He thinks that losers will be the ones to guide the way. The passage is credited to the author TK, which leads people to believe that it is Trace, along with a fixation on losers, which is something he used to dwell on. Trace and Miliardo met during what is now being called the Eve Wars. The next file is from September of AC-195, which is a video file of Duo Maxwell talking to some classmates. The Gundam pilots are always undercover as students whenever heading out to missions. He talks to them about the complex relationships between Earth and the colonies. His face is blurry, but it is the only known footage of a Gundam pilot. He talks about how the colonies can't forget the natural beauty of the Earth. She doesn't believe that this is actually Duo. Kathy then notices the name of the person who archived the next file. It happens to be Sally Poe, her mother. Spring AC-196 is a video file between Relina Darlian and an old man. The footage is grainy and the audio is the only thing of value. This was during the 8 months of peace before Marimea's rebellion. She talks about how revenge is a disease that can be passed down from generation to generation. She once again dwells on the idea of total pacifism and whether it could be achieved by throwing down arms. The man wonders if this is why she is planning on the Mars terraforming project. She believes in it wholeheartedly. They also mention that Hito is on a mission. These files are only accessible to the preventers via Master Chang. Also, a part of the files are blueprints and a manual for an artificial hibernation cryogenic capsule. The blueprints are simply from someone named J, most likely referring to Dr. J. They make it to the preventer base near the polar ice caps. She says that in the sky she could see Deimos, a moon orbiting Mars, and relates it to a frozen teardrop. Ooh, title drop in the first episode. Also, if you look at Deimos, it isn't completely spherical and does indeed look like a teardrop. She meets with Master Chang. If you haven't realized it yet, this is Chang Wu-Fei. With Master Chang is a priest with a ponytail who says that Kathy looks like her mother. She pulls a gun on the man to assert dominance, but he is unfazed. This is Father Maxwell, and with him is his son Duo. They wonder why he is named after the famous Gundam pilot, not putting 2 and 2 together. The data files that Kathy brought are key to awakening Princess Aurora from hibernation. They could begin Operation Mythos. Trace File 1. Mars now has an Earth-like atmosphere, although they are still 3 times lighter than Earth or the colonies. The book spends an entire page waxing philosophical about the northern lights of Mars. It's gonna be one of those type of books. I could already tell. Awakening Princess Aurora requires 3 preludes. The data seems to be a password of the sorts. Inputting the passwords will be the defrosting procedure. She says that Tchaikovsky's ballet, which Operation Mythos is named after, has 4 parts. Master Chang says that Father Maxwell has the 4th part. He says that his part is most eloquent, but he is more focused on the defrosting procedure. Apparently, there is an 80% chance that one's memories will be reset upon awakening. That's too high a risk, I feel. But that is also the other reason for the data. Old memories help in memory retention. Duo wonders where his partner is and calls his dad Father Crapswell. Ha! Good good one. The kid is a pilot. He boasts about being far superior to Princess Aurora. The father apologizes for his son. He has been like this since his mother passed away. You could probably guess who the mother was. He wonders if Maxwell is a preventer, but he says they are more just old friends, or rather, more of a frenemy. Father Maxwell and Master Chang catch up. Kathy doesn't want to interrupt, but it is a part of her mission to acquire intel. They tell her that because the fragility of the mind, they have to not just read the files, but experience it. Father Maxwell pulls off his glasses, which happens to be virtual reality glasses. When he says experience it, he means literally. Well, virtually, but as a literary framing device, it is no different from reality. They could use it to reconstruct the mind, but nothing is guaranteed. He may even end up turning on them. After uploading the files, they're able to use the holographic monitor to navigate and explore all the files, or memories, for lack of a better word. Wait, this is just that one episode of Rick and Morty.
More like a clip show made of clips you never saw.
They wonder why the earliest entry is AC-130. If you give Princess Aurora the entirety of human history, they may become a super genius, omniscient being. You must feed them data during their timeline. Yeah, but how about you make them an omniscient being? That sounds way cooler. The banter between Chang and Maxwell is great. Chang calls him a Western bastard with no heart, and the father calls him an Easterner that brings shame to his family. Just really digging at each other's personal insecurities like a real friend would do to piss you off. The first record is of Trace Kushanada, AC 171 to 195. It goes over a description of Trace and how he memorized the names of the dead and focused on the losers. He died by the hands of Gundam Unit 5. That's Master Chang. Kathy wonders why he focused so much on losers. People painted him as a hero, but he was more complex, enigmatic, a very melancholy man at many times. She puts on the visor and sees the word 0, the name of the program that allows them to view the memories. The year was AC 170, winter, a year before the birth of Trace. Ayn and Angelina were on the American continent. The two lovebirds kiss. Ayn Yui was born in a space colony in AC 150. He was the nephew of Hiro Yui, the original Hiro Yui, the representative of colonial affairs. Ayn's job was to bridge the gap between the Earth and the colonies at the age of 20, while visiting the Rockefeller Foundation branch in North America. He met Angelina Kushanada, a Rockefeller representative. The two met at a party and have been sneaking around for some time. Ayn was faithful to Hiro and the colonies, and Angelina was faithful to Rockefeller and Earth. In the end, Ayn returned to the colonies without her. Colony VO-8744 was once a melting pot colony, but now one of the most fierce anti-alliance colonies. Their anarchy is fueled by their lack of resources and anger towards the Earth Alliance. Even though Hiro Yui is the famous one in the history books, it can be said that Ayn played a vital role in strengthening their inter-colonial support. He was able to convince VO-8744 to lay down arms. God, the names of colonies in this universe suck. It's like reading a barcode. After this, Angelina came to him. The two eventually got married at VO-8744 in Maxwell Church. Ayn threw himself more into his romance and his work with Hiro. Angelina traveled and lived the nomadic lifestyle that Ayn lived. Summer, AC 171. Angelina returns to Hiro and Ayn's home colony around the L3 point. She is 6 months pregnant. Hiro suggests that she give birth on Earth. Apparently, older generations of After Colony are superstitious about children being born in a colony due to birth defects. It is something that has been solved for a long time, but older people are superstitious about it still. The Winter family of the L3 colony is still doing births using test tube babies and DNA manipulation. He says that he is concerned with her father, Duke Songkant Kushanada. Still sticking with the number name motifs, I see. He thinks that they should seek out the Rockefeller Foundation, but she says bluntly that they have no connection with the Kushanada family anymore. She says not to worry himself and asks why he won't marry. She says if anything were to happen to him, Ayn and her new family can take over for him. This is the last conversation that these two will have. Sometime later, Angelina was randomly abducted by a mysterious man. Ayn is certain it was the Kushanada family. He eventually gets a message that says goodbye. Considering your precarious position, perhaps this is for the best. He refuses to allow them to take her. He gets into contact with his friend Kant, who acquires intel that they are heading to the spaceport. If you remember from our coverage of Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, Kant is the leader of White Fang. They head to the spaceport where he runs for Angelina, but he is instantly surrounded by Alliance soldiers. A Commander Septim tells him to stand down as he is trespassing. He is just a middling commander here, but in Gundam Wing, this is the general that Lady Un put a bullet through his head. He keeps moving forward. Septim's men shoot him in the shoulder, then his ankle. He falls to the ground but keeps crawling forward. The commander points a gun at his head, but the plane has taken off. He doesn't need to die. he is taken into custody instead. In jail, he thinks that he will see Angelina once again. Unfortunately, the two lovers will never reunite, and things will only get worse for both of them. AC-171, Autumn. 3 months later in Luxembourg, Angelina gave birth to a boy she named Trace. Last episode, we saw Ainz get beaten and bloodied by Septum and his men on the runway. This was runway 13. Trace means 13 and is a reminder of that day on the runway. Wow, that's dumber than the dice in Star Wars. He looks very similar to both the Yuis. Not too long later, she was forced into a political marriage with Hundert Catalonia and the Rockefeller Foundation. Then her father, Saint-Cont, passed away. Before dying, he gave all the power to little Trace, while Dermail Catalonia assumed control until Trace was old enough. Angelina plans on using this new marriage to thrust the ideals of Hito and Ainz onto her son Trace, a world of colonial independence. Through him, perhaps this could be achieved. Meanwhile, in space, Hiroyui proclaimed the complete unification of the colonies to the public. This just gave the Earth Sphere Alliance an excuse to expand their power to space. They go full America and enact absurd tariffs on the space colonies. Angelina would whisper into the ears of Trace that his grandfather tore apart his mother and father. Well, that explains this line.
I'm making the person closest to me feel insecure.
AC-173, Spring. Hundert and Angelina had a child of their own, Vant Kushanada. As the person who carries both the Catalonia and Kushanada bloodlines, Vant seemed more fit to be the heir than Trace. In space, Hiroyui gave his Heart of Space proclamation. This would later go on to inspire the Sand Kingdom in creating a world of pacifism, which would then be passed on to Relina. Even with resistance members like Kant and Dekim Barton on the Yui's side, Angelina feared for their lives. With the help of the Space Force budget, Septum arranged for a hit on the Yuis. The man he hired would be a sniper named Lo. AC-175, April 7th. The family went on vacation in Scandinavia where they saw the Northern Lights and much more. However, the next morning, Angelina's worst fears were imagined. On the news, she learned that Hiroyui was assassinated. At the same event, a bomb went off, killing Ainz as well. Angelina cries alone when Trace comes in. He feels for his mother and cries as well. This was the first and last time that Trace has ever cried in his life. In AC-195, Trace would write a piece quoting Rilke's Autumn in reference to his experience of the ice flows seen in Scandinavia. They return home when Angelina donned black. They never traveled again. We then see the poem Dazzling Light, AC-176, Autumn. On the island of Corsica, the Alliance built up their military forces and began production of mobile suits. This is due to 5 brilliant scientists and engineers. However, after Hiroyui's assassination, the engineers all disappeared. They left mobile suit development in the hands of Tuberoth and Sace Clark. He is the brother of Trant Clark, the random Oz soldier in the anime that was consumed by the Zero System. Remember? Nah, me neither. In August, they began rollout of the Leo. By October, they were everywhere. Tuberoth then unveiled the Tragos, a mid-range support mobile suit. Sace stepped it up as well and created the Ares. These 3 mobile suits mark the first generation of mobile suit development, while a new military-industrial complex grows. The Sand Kingdom started to change. Formerly humanitarians, they took the approach of absolute peace. In space, the peace that the Yuis tried to maintain is slowly falling apart. The Alliance responded to conflict on A00-206 colony with force under the guise of helping. This just made things worse, and endless conflict began. Hundert was never around, claiming to always be working for the Foundation, but the boys saw him as a coward who was retreating from his family. Their father eventually admitted her to a hospital in the Sand Kingdom. AC-180, April 8th. Trace is now 9, and Vant now 7. They go to visit their mother at the hospital every holiday. Every time they visit, she says the same thing to Trace. Seize the world, become the ruler of Earth and space. The Sun Kingdom wasn't always a nation of peace. They don't really have any resources and had a weak military. Regardless, they dipped their toes in conquest, only to be conquered and put into debt. Cut to the present, and the current king has put all their resources into medical research. This made them the top nation in global healthcare. 1/3 of the population has a role in medicine, either as a doctor or nurse. They were dispatched throughout the world and began helping people. They even helped in the advancements in child care in space. Remember, there is a superstition about having a kid in space. The superstition is built around it being a real problem in the past. The Sand Kingdom met many times with Hiroyui before he was assassinated. The king would go on to proclaim total pacifism. 20 months later, General Daigo Onagel of the Earth Sphere Alliance attacked, and the Sand Kingdom failed. Angelina was moved to a colony cluster at the L1 point before the fall of the Sang Kingdom. This put distance between her and the boys. As Trace grew older, he had less and less interest in the aristocratic society. At age 11, he rejected his role with the Rockefeller Foundation and joined the United Earth Sphere Alliance Military Academy. He was trained by Colonel Kilius Catalonia, who was the younger brother of Hundert Crucianata and Duke Dermel's youngest son. These aristocratic family trees must be wild. Colonel Catalonia's 2-year-old visited often along with her 2-year-old eyebrows. She, like much of the aristocracy, is a distant relative to Trace. He was trained in military strategy and mobile suit tactics. While visiting Corsica Base, Trace saw something that would alter the course of his life. He saw the mobile suit Tallgeese. He tries to talk to the technician wearing a Hawaiian shirt. It happens to be Mike Howard. Trace doesn't understand where this mobile suit stands, where the Ares, Leo, or Tragos can't handle the situation. Howard says he is thinking as though a mobile suit is a cog in the military machine. It is a mobile suit that has the ability to take on hundreds of units. Trace thinks this sounds more like a fairy tale. He wonders if he could be the pilot of this mobile suit. One mobile suit acting as a one-man army would minimize lives lost on the battlefield. Trace demands it be painted in elegant color. Zex would go on to pilot this unit, but 12 years later, he would be reunited with the Tallgeese. In the anime, when he saw the mobile suit, it seems like this was the first time he saw it, but he was feigning ignorance while he was around Lady Un, as he didn't want to show his true self until she proved herself. What a weird retcon. But seeing this mobile suit would inspire him in the future when he enacted Operation Daybreak. Trace also went on to help with the development of the Tallgeese 2 and 3. MC-0022, Winter. Master Chang activates a device. The alarms go off as a hidden door reveals a cryo chamber. It looks like a frozen teardrop. Inside is Princess Aurora, a boy. The boy happens to be Hiro Yui, the pilot of the Gundam. This face looks familiar to Kathy Poe. She remembers the archive security cam footage of AC-195 of Dual Maxwell giving a speech. She is referring to this speech.
This false pacifism, this false living space, outer space is nothing but a breeding ground for even more battles in the future.
Hiro used Duo's name while undercover. The only footage of a Gundam pilot is of Hiro, not Duo. She realizes that 3 of the Gundam pilots are standing in front of her. Well, 2 of them. One's defrosting. She wonders why Master Chang never told her. He says her knowing wouldn't change anything. She needs to finish reviewing the files and jumps back in. AC-185, Autumn. At age 14, Trace surpassed the now Brigadier General Kilius Catalonia. He was assigned to an officer training school in Africa, as the general didn't want Trace to deal with the grumpy old politicians in Europe. Outside of Kilius Catalonia, he was seen as someone who has no real-world experience. A now 5-year-old Dorothy believes that Trace is a genius on the battlefield. Kilius Catalonia tells Dorothy the history of mobile suits in battle. It was anti-alliance groups that first put mobile suit workers to use in combat. This caught the attention of Oz, who began development of their own. However, development was stalled when the 5 engineers went missing. Even with the development of the Leo, Tragos, and Ares, many Alliance forces found themselves with no mobile suits, as they are stuck in their old bureaucratic ways. The Tragos was just used as a gun turret replacement. However, Trace changed this by integrating all 3 mobile suits into a single unit. Ares units would conduct recon and launch surprise attacks to disrupt enemy front lines. Based on their intel, Tragos units would provide covering fire, while the Leos head in on the ground. All forces were converged to take out the target. This is similar to Napoleon's cavalry tactics or Hitler's Panzer Division, but most conflicts involve small insurgencies. No longer are we in the days of soldiers treating war as an extension of dueling. It is now a systematic approach that requires precise management over the system, just like a business. It wasn't until next season until he was able to put it into practice. A rebellion broke out in Mogadishu. Vance started playing a bigger role in the deliberations. A supreme commander of the Alliance ground forces, Venti, thinks that these mobile suit forces are just toys. Trace chooses 5 candidates for his mission. Zex Marquise, 10 years old. Lucretia Noin, 10 years old. Izumi Tarnoff, 14 years old. Solak de Broek, 12 years old, and Elv Angil, age 13. They're quite young. Trace and Zex will lead the Ares units. Noin and Izumi will run support in the Tragos. Solak and Elv will push in on the enemy front lines with Leos. All the mobile suits are white, which explains Noin's white Taurus in the series. Trace and Zex launch. They take out the command center and turrets around the outer perimeter. The Leos and Tragos move in with minimal conflict. The rebels wave the white flag, and the battle is over in an instant. Commander Venti is mad that this operation was accomplished with just 6 mobile suits. Trace talks to Zex. He calls him Miliardo and seems to know his true identity that he has been hiding. From that day on, a new era of warfare began. AC-186, Spring. The use of mobile suits grew swiftly. Soon, mobile suit battles were taking place across the world. Demand for mobile suits made the Rockefeller Foundation a lot of money. The military-industrial complex grew to new levels. In this universe, it should be called a Rockefeller complex. On the moon is the factory pumping out Leos, Ares, and Tragos mobile suits. Meanwhile, navies are demanding aquatic mobile suits, which will become Pisces, while space forces are demanding something that will eventually become the Chimera Leo. However, many rebels have been stealing and siphoning off many of the Alliance mobile suits. Because of this, the Marius factory is constantly playing a game of catch-up on mobile suit production. The factory on the moon expanded to accommodate their production needs. Trace was the one who laid the groundwork, but it was Vaunt who revolutionized operations. This involved aggressive automation practices. He also reduced full-time work and created an around-the-clock shift system. Vaunt became vice director and acting representative of the Foundation. He also went after the aristocracy and took down massive swaths of corruption. This put their father in a position of being the one that old aristocrats would plead to. Of course, Vaunt the Reformer can't be stopped. Under Kushinaga would soon find himself in the L1 cluster of colonies, just like his abandoned wife, Angelina. He then set his sights on Alliance forces' doorsteps. Vaunt replaced the supreme commander of the Alliance forces with Field Marshal Kilius Catalonia. This allowed Oz to gain complete autonomy. They could function at their own discretion. The child soldiers we talked about last episode actually has a name. They are referred to as the Specials. Even though on paper Kilius controls the Specials, it is Trace who runs the show. Conflict and insurgencies are now handled with masterful efficiency. He continues being a mobile suit instructor at Lake Victoria, inspiring new cadets. There were 2 pillars on his philosophy: act on your own judgment, 4, the soldiers who follow. I don't get that last one. Future instructors like Noin will take this to heart. AC-186, Summer. Trace's discipline doesn't involve regimented training. He is all about accumulating knowledge from military history, theoretical frameworks, and battle analysis. Even with mobile suits, it is important to understand the fundamental principles of past warfare. His tactics were demonstrated during the first Lunar Wars. This was a conflict among the laborers at Marius plant. The workers were pushed to a breaking point. Interestingly, the 1/6 gravity of the moon caused people to not have to sleep as much after acclimating. This caused levels of depression. Management most certainly took advantage of this with more work. This grew and grew, so the factory decided to turn to the Alliance to handle the situation. They responded with 3 Chimeras. The Leo Type 2, aka the Chimera, is a prototype Leo used by Alliance Space Forces along with Rebel forces. There's no visual or fan art of this mobile suit, but many of the prototype Leos we see look somewhere in between a Leo and a tall geese. We know the new Chimera is just an updated Chimera, so we can assume it looks similar. Some of the workers stole the newly constructed new Chimeras, aka the Leo Type 3. The workers ended up defeating the military mobile suits sent to quell the rebellion. Certainly these new models played a vital role in their win. Marius plant fell under worker control. This inspired rebellions within the L1 and L2 cluster of colonies. Because the factory was able to roll out 10 mobile suits a week, they were able to amass an army that rivals the Lunar Space Forces in just 2 months. Over time, many terrorists and former Alliance members became commanders of rebellion mobile suit forces. They also created the Tragos 2 and the battle fortress Sagittarius and Centaurus. The Tragos 2 is simply an upgraded Tragos. The Centaurus and Sagittarius are 300 meters in length. Weapons include 25 260mm gun turrets, 2 1300mm beam cannons, and 100 twin machine guns. These 2 fortresses can take on 100 mobile suits. Lydell Hart is the one in charge of the fortress, and is one of the few people who still believe in the big gun philosophy in an age of mobile suits. This is starting to change. Lydell Hart wanted even more battleships. He decided to hire Mike Howard to create a new ship that he would call the Peace Million. It would in fact do the opposite of peace. This wouldn't be achieved until AC-192. Lydell Hart unfortunately didn't live to see the ship, and we know that Miliardo Peacecraft will go on to command the ship with Mike Howard. Vaunt is talking to General Venti and General Lydell Hart about reclaiming the Marius plant. He wants to dispatch the Specials and have Lydell Hart halt his attack for now. A General Noventa steps in and says that the enemies will grow strong in the meantime. It will take Trace and his team 7 days to make it to the moon. This gives them time to make 100 new chimeras. Waiting doesn't seem to be an option. There is one thing that they are hiding at Maria's plant. Underground, they are working on developing neo-titanium along with what will become Gundanium. This will revolutionize the next generation of mobile suits. Kilius says that he will allow Lydell Hart to engage, but he can't use his 2 fortresses. Everyone protests this decision. This is when a young Septum interjects. He says they could use the fortress to buy time for the specials. They need to think about the fact that Lydell Hart might defect at any moment, and they need to keep people on their side. Vaunt and Kilius agree, but they can't use the giant megaparticle cannons. They move into action for the operation. This compromise by Vaunt would be a huge mistake for him. Trace and his team gets word that they are heading to the moon. His team is using the new Leo Type 4, aka the Griefs, which is German for Griffin. He departs Earth with 25 Griefs and 24 elite cadets. Zex, Noin, Izumi, Solak, and Elv are now leaders to other cadets. Artemis Sedici is a former Anti-Alliance Forces member and is in command at Maria's plant. She happens to be a mother of Colonel Sedici, who will become a White Fang member in AC-195. They will be dividing their 100 chimeras into 8 units of 10 each, along with 4 strike teams of 5 units. Each team will create a star-like pattern for defenses. Meanwhile, Lydell uses a V-shaped formation. Flying V! In terms of raw power, the Alliance gets the upper hand. This war of attrition will most likely give the win to the Alliance. Artemis knows that the Alliance isn't firing their beam cannons. That is when Lydell says screw this and decides to fire those cannons. The Marius plant goes down swiftly. The rebels proceed to phase 2. This involves each formation encircling the Alliance forces as they no longer have to focus on the plant. The beam cannon attacks didn't hit any rebel mobile suits, even though it took out the factory. The Alliance forces are now dispersed, and they aren't communicating. The Sagittarius and Centaurus accidentally squishes some of their own mobile suits. Whoops, it has 300 seconds before they can fire the main cannons again. The Alliance and Rebel forces dwindle at an even rate, until Artemis infiltrates the Sagittarius Bridge. The battle ends after 24 hours of non-stop combat. Lydell Hart surrenders. The fortress is now in the hands of the rebels, and they use it as a new POW camp. Prussian general and military theorist Karl von Clausewitz states that victory allows the winner to impose their vision of the world, whether through subjugation or forced peace. The workers don't think they need further conflict, but the anti-alliance terrorists want to continue their campaign. This led to a divide between the rebels. This is a benefit to Trace, who is on their way to the moon. Trace arrives at a spaceport at the L1 colony cluster. Here, there aren't too many civilians, with exceptions of people fleeing the lunar plant. One of these civilian families has a 6-year-old boy. Also leaving the shuttle is a man wearing his hat, hiding his face. Trace had no idea that this man is Odin Lowe, the man who killed Ainz and Hiroyui. Odin is a freelance operative. He glances at Trace, who says he looks like Hiro and Ainz. He bumps into the little kid on accident. The kid's mother apologizes. This moment makes Trace think of his mother. He doesn't have time to visit her while he is here. MC-0022, Princess Aurora, aka Hiroyui, is on the verge of awakening. Kathy Poe says that his face looks identical to the boy that Trace and Odin just interacted with. His pod opens. Hiro awakens and is welcomed by his old friends Duo and Master Chang. And that will conclude Volume 1 of Rondo of Redemption, the first arc of Gundam Wing Frozen Teardrop. We have seen that the colonies have been struggling and fighting against Oz, but much of that wasn't explained in Gundam Wing proper. The fleshing out of the rebellions is probably the best part about this novel so far. Next time we will start Volume 2 as we continue reading into the Trace files. The specials attack the rebels on the moon, and Odin trains a young boy to be a murderer. But that will do it for now, new types. Remember, never underestimate rebels who have the ability to make their own mobile suits. Peace.